Welcome to the Top Order podcast. It is the second episode being recorded here Tuesday night in New Zealand in anticipation of a T20 World Cup in the Caribbean and the USA. We are going to run through all the groups, A through D, general thoughts about who's going to make it out of the group and who the potential spoilers are. We'll talk about the players that we're most looking forward to watch. And we're also, of course, going to come up with our ubiquitous predictions for finalists, winners, top wicket takers, run scorers, and turquoise cap wearers in this T20 World Cup. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, boys, hot on the heels of our IPL wrap-up, so you'll notice from a continuity perspective some similar attire from our last episode.
It took me ages to find this jumper after the last recording.
I know, and I was trying to figure out whether I'd done the button up or not, but we are here again. We're going to talk more white ball T20 cricket at a time, probably more when we're preparing for the first test matches of a Northern Hemisphere summer. The freshly cut grass at Lords, but that can wait for a couple of months or so because we've got a World Cup and a pretty unique World Cup spread across two nations. I guess
a lot of nations.
Well, a lot of nations, but yeah, the Caribbean and the USA. Opening comments from you really around the dates and the venues that we can expect to see in this tournament.
Yeah, so look, I mean, very briefly, starts on the 2nd of June, finishes on the 30th of June. So we've got a month going through this tournament, as you said, in the West Indies and in the USA. The opening game is USA versus Canada in Dallas, which is, very, you talked about the unique nature of this World Cup. That certainly shows what kind of tournament we're dealing with here. We've got 20 teams. As you say, there's 4 different pools, 5 teams in each pool, and we're going to run through that. And I mean, I think the USA side of it, while fascinating in terms of getting cricket to the USA and putting it on the big stage,
again,
I think it is overblown slightly in that from the Super 8 stage and the semi-finals and finals are all in the West Indies. So we're just going to see pool games in the USA, but still, an important step in their cricket development and getting it out to the American people. So
I guess what we are going to see, though, so cricket's oldest fixture, by the way, Canada versus the USA.
Oh, yeah.
It dates back to the late 1800s. So you lose a lot of quizzes if you guessed the first international cricket fixture, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't have got USA versus Canada, I bet.
Would not have, no.
And I think the other thing is that we've got a game in the US, in New York, that is Pakistan, India, in New York, in a stadium that's going to be purpose-built for that game, and then dismantled at the end of it. And
really?
So it's only going to be there for, I don't know what they're going to do with whether the pitch is staying and the outfield staying and it's just all the stands and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think they're calling it a modular stadium. So I think they've purchased it from IKEA, and they're there right now with some Allen keys putting it all together.
Some interesting ticket prices as well, I've heard, in that stadium.
Yeah, but hot dogs are cheap. Yeah, just like at IKEA.
Why don't we start with some general thoughts about the tournament before we kind of break into the pools and actually, looking at them. I'm keen to get your thoughts on the format as it is. I just said 20 teams. It then, moves from there. The top 2 teams from each pool go into a Super 8s phase where you play that again, gets split into 2 pools where you play 3 more games, and then it goes into semi-final and finals. Do we aside from maybe the complicated nature of how that's all going to work, do we like that there's 20 teams in this World Cup? Are we excited to see some of the teams that, from our point of view, who really, to be fair, probably only pay most attention to the test playing nations? Are we excited to see some of the teams that we don't very often get to see?
I'll go. I am. But I think previous tournaments that have had sort of the first stage where you play into the tournament at the venues and as part of the official World Cup, I think works a little bit better in that there is more competitive games. There are less uncompetitive games, if you want to use the glass half empty analogy. And then you get teams making a run into the sort of Super 12 or Super 6 stages that makes it exciting. So I think having the 20 nations is great, but I think more competitive games is the way forward. Having said that, we shouldn't deny Nepal the chance to play against South Africa, for example. We shouldn't deny, I don't know who's in the Australian group, Namibia and Oman having a chance to play against Australia in a T20 World Cup or a 50-over World Cup. So there is upside to every lopsided fixture in that group stage.
I like it for this format of cricket, the T20, where there is the upset potential all the way across the tournament. But I do like a tournament where everybody plays everybody, which we did see at like last year's World Cup.
Yeah.
I just feel like you have, it's more likely that you get the best team winning at the end, or the best teams in the final at the end. But in saying that, I do like the fact that it is really tiered. There's a Super 8, then there's a semi-final, then there's a final. So
yeah, I think you're gonna have to be good to win this tournament.
I think it works well for this format.
Yeah, look, I'll make it the whatever a trifecta when there's 4 people is. Quadfecta? No, it's probably not.
Quadrilla?
Quadrilla, yeah.
All right, fair enough. So, yeah, look, I agree. I think it's a really good format, and I think rewards the guys and the teams that have come through, pretty stringent qualifying. You look at someone like Namibia, they've had to beat Uganda, who are in the tournament as well.
Kenya, I think.
Yeah, Kenya, Zimbabwe, in order to get into the final. The final 20, and yeah, there's plenty of room for upset there. But I think you're only going to see these guys be able to get better if they are playing in those, in those big games. It's big now that all of the games that they play, the associate nations have got the same rank, the same ranking. You're getting an average that counts against the T20 averages or the ODI averages. So look, I really like that, and I think you ask any of the guys playing for the likes of Namibia and Oman, and to a lesser extent, probably Ireland and the Netherlands, who've been around for probably 10, 15 years now, they're going to love playing against Jofra Archer or a Mitchell Starc or whoever it might be. So yeah, really like the inclusivity of the tournament. And look, IPL should look out, shouldn't they? This is done and dusted in a month, and it's 20 teams. So there's probably a middle ground somewhere in terms of getting a 10-team tournament to last a reasonable amount of time.
Do you think the ICC are nervous about the kind of what you said before, Baldy, about how if there are lopsided, like if let's say there are a lot of lopsided games, and let's just say up front that there are a lot of lopsided games in the IPL where we expect that teams are evenly matched, if you want to call it that way. If some let's say Uganda, Papua New Guinea, like Nepal, let's say every time they play a test playing nation, they get absolutely thumped. Like, is that, I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think we will see some more surprising results than we maybe, are expecting. But would that be a failure? Would the ICC think, oh, that's a big problem?
The ICC are going to spin it in that it's giving an opportunity for those nations to have that exposure and spin all the positive things they can out of it, and they should. We've had this in the past, though, with 50-over cricket and 50-over World Cup tournaments where we've had associate nations come into the World Cup for a first time in a 50-over game and get hammered by 300-plus runs or 250-plus runs against, a big, strong, traditional test-playing powerhouse. That has had no negative effect on the development of that nation's cricket, other than they've had a big, heavy defeat against a big nation. In 20-over cricket, the margin for defeat is smaller in terms of runs and wickets, but it's still no less pronounced in terms of the relative disparity of the teams. So I think regardless of which way it goes, the ICC will spin this as a great win for, as Adam said, the inclusivity of cricket, and also for the development of those associate nations and the bringing together of the talent pool of global cricket.
Yeah, I think it's probably got one negative connotation, and that's potentially for the USA. And that is that they're obviously trying to get eyeballs on the game. It's a game where there are populations all around the US, but primarily dominated by expats in those locations. They're going to want to get eyeballs on this from a larger scale in America. And if America or the USA get absolutely pantsed by India or Pakistan or even Ireland, and it's over before before the allotted TV schedule, and you're watching a rerun of Wheel of Fortune a little bit quicker than you wanted to, then that might have a negative effect just on that particular component. But in general, I think, as Raj said earlier on, this is the right format. I think for 20 team World Cup. I don't think I'd advocated at a 50 over World Cup, because I do think you'd have too many of those those games where a Travis Head gets going against Uganda and gets 373, and then Mitchell Starc bowls them out for 17. And then, that's not going to be great, is it?
No, probably not. Moving on to, I guess, we touched on it a little bit in the IPL wrap we've just done. I mean, I think obviously this is too close to the IPL. Like not having 5 days, I think, between this final and then the start of the T20 World Cup, which is the marquee tournament for this format, is ridiculous. Am I getting any arguments there?
I think you can read all that you want to read into it by saying that Australia fielded 9 players in their warm-up game, including some of their coaching staff, because their IPL players got a well-deserved couple of days with their family back in Australia before flying to the West Indies, which meant that Australia played an official warm-up game for this World Cup, fielding 9 people. That tells all you need to know about the logistics of the time difference between the end of the IPL and the start of this tournament. There is not enough time for these teams to prepare.
And that's where I want to pick up, and maybe you can give a comment, Raj, as a New Zealand fan. There's been a bit of blowback here in New Zealand because New Zealand has said, well, we're not going to play warm-up games. Like, we're not going to bother with warm-up games. And like, do you think that that's a mistake? I mean, obviously, if we get knocked out of this tournament early on, people are going to point to that and go, oh, they weren't prepared for the tournament. But is there any value in playing these games where you field 15 and then you bowl you bowl whoever you want and you do all of those things? That, like I said to Binksy the other day about kind of momentum going into big games. Does it matter? Is it a thing? Is it nothing? Or is it kind of nowhere these days? Like, these guys go from lots of different tournaments. Do you think it even matters that when they're not playing warm-up games?
Only for the potential for that to backfire on them if they don't perform well at the World Cup. I think professional cricket players should play cricket, so they should do the sort of warm-ups played at a probably lesser intensity than normal, and with those bigger squad sizes rather than an 11 selected. So I think that should be playing them, but it's not the same, is it? It's not the same as watching a bilateral series or something that they could have had leading into this, rather than or closer. They had one last month. But it's not the same as seeing a bilateral series rather than a warm-up game.
Totally.
I might surprise you and say it doesn't bother me. And the reason it doesn't bother me, I think, is we've got to get used to it. We've seen, and look, I'll speak from an English perspective. We've seen a question mark around whether Johnny Bairstow could come back from the IPL and go straight into Test cricket, and the answer was yes, and he did it reasonably successfully. We've seen this over the course of the last probably 15 years. We don't see warm-ups on Test tours. We see either pretty piss-poor 13-a-side games where someone bowls what their bowling load is and then comes off, and they kind of get enough into the legs of a bowler and a batter has a little bit of a hit.
And they play against guys who are not playing first-class cricket, like who haven't made their domestic first-class team. They play against the
second
fringe,
or third team, the fringe team. So I think from that perspective, the players are kind of used to it. I think ultimately, again, we can argue this as much as we like. The IPL window is too big in my view, and I think in all of our views, and it is impacting on this. But we don't often see that amount of preparation for a Test series anymore. Or for a tournament of this nature, and we're not going to do it, particularly when we're having an ICC event every year. Can we really build into the schedule, 2 weeks for warm-up games when we're having a World Cup, whether it's white ball 50 over or white ball 20 over every single year? And the answer is probably no, unless we cut out a Test series somewhere or cut out a domestic tournament, and that's not going to be palatable either. So maybe we just got to get used to it.
I think you're right, to be honest. Yeah, it's just so tight right now, this international calendar. And if we got windows for all these tournaments, there's just no way around it, unfortunately.
And the associate nations are playing heaps of warm-up games, so they're going to be tuned up, and that adds a little bit to the potential jeopardy, doesn't it?
But, and look, we have seen some teams say, look, it's important. Obviously, England, Pakistan, they haven't been able to get much cricket because of the weather over there, but they've got a tournament. West Indies have been playing against South Africa, albeit South Africa has had very much a B side. And the USA just beat Bangladesh in a series. So look, there has been plenty of games going on. Last question, general question before we get into the pool play. What do we think we can expect from this tournament in terms of pitches and score, the kind of scores? Because Obviously, we just spent a whole bunch of time the last couple of months talking about the IPL. I ran some numbers. Out of 252 T20I innings in the West Indies, there's only been 11 200-plus scores out of all of those games. And 3 of them are actually from Canada and Bermuda against Panama, Belize, and Bahamas. So, that suggests that these scores that we've been seeing in the IPL, where they scored, 200-plus on a regular basis, might not be happening. Even going back to the CPL and Major League Cricket, the scores, if you look at them, the general score, the general average is more around the 150, 160 mark. And, do we think that the international players, having come off an IPL, are so primed to going out and playing the style of cricket that we just talked about, Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma and all these guys just going nuts? Or is the game actually genuinely going to shift when we move to international cricket?
We'll find out in the Super 8 stages, won't we? Because I think in the early stages, we'll see plenty of scores that are in the 190 to 220 when Australia, are playing against. Look, I don't mean any disrespect, but probably do to Oman. We're going to see a test nation or a major nation put up some big scores in the pool stages. I think we'll know the answer in the Super 8 stages. And I think one of the key things is we're probably going to see a reasonable amount of spin. And we've seen that, I think, in the CPL. And we've seen that in the Caribbean historically recently. So I do think we will see scores lower than the IPL over the course of the tournament, and the impact player rule obviously is not going to be there either.
Yeah. Can I have a crack at this? You're absolutely right. The impact player rule is going to make a big difference.
You're most welcome to have a crack at it, Michael. You're part of the show.
Thank you. The impact player rule is going to have a massive differentiator in terms of the IPL, particularly in the semi-finals and the Super 8 stage and the final. Your key bellwether indicator for what the scores are going to be like is what we saw in the eliminators and the playoffs in the IPL.
No one got anywhere near 200 today.
Scores came down. Bowlers started to dominate. As soon as we get pitches that are not incredibly conducive to batting, we saw the difference between teams that were able to get 250, 260, 280 versus only being able to get 160 and 115 in semi-finals and finals when there was more jeopardy and the pitches weren't quite as conducive to just see ball, hit ball. So I think we are going to see more scores between 160 to 180 than we are above 180, I think, in this tournament.
The only unknown for me is what the stadiums and the pitches in the USA will be like, especially from a shape perspective. We don't know how big the grounds are going to be, how batting friendly the pitches are going to be. So that's my only sort of unknown. I think when we get to the Caribbean, it's more of a known quantity. 200 traditionally is a winning score in 2020 cricket. Yeah. And I think if anyone gets near that, that's sort of they've got a real foot on winning that game.
I think we'd be guessing, wouldn't we? Because none of us know the dimensions of the ground. We could have probably looked this stuff up.
We could have. Yeah, I mean, I looked at the Major League Cricket scores from last year, tried to do a bit of analysis on those. And certainly, yeah, there are the odd big game, but the majority of them are much smaller scores. So, yeah, look, obviously just from thinking about watching a few of those games, yeah, you saw, I mean, yeah, I don't think that was even a worthwhile representation of what we're going to get.
We're going to see Sky versus Corey Anderson here. He could end up in another state.
Hey, Corey Anderson, we'll get to him soon. He's going great.
Right. Well, we're 20 minutes in. Should we get to Group A?
Why don't we do that? Yeah.
So, quick explainer. We've got 4 groups, A through D. So they've gone with the alphabetical. So we're going to talk.
Could they workshop that, or
should we go with numerical or alphabetical?
They could have given them names, couldn't they? Or conferences. It's in America after all. It could have been, the American League West, Eastern, Central. But we're going to start with Group A, the first group, shall we say? We're going to talk through the 5 teams. Just give a name check. We're not going to do a detailed team by team preview, but we are going to talk about who we think is going to make it through. And the players that we're most looking forward to watching in each of the groups or pools. Raj, I think you're up with Group A, aren't you?
Yes, Group A. They saved the best for first. So the five teams in Group A are Canada, the United States, headlined, as we mentioned there, by Corey Anderson. Ireland, Pakistan, and India are probably the teams that we will focus on for the rest of this discussion. Who do I think will make it through to the Super 8 stage? I think India. I've just got a line here that says a lot of talent in that team. So I think India sort of
come here for the cutting edge analysis.
Yeah, I've got them on the dais there, making it through. But then it becomes a little bit more murky, and it becomes a bit murky because, I have this theory, and I've made it known that it's very hard to play good cricket when stuff's not going well off the field. And if we just go through what's happening with Pakistan cricket at the moment, it's just massive amounts of turmoil. I was reading through this because I was catching up on a little bit of this reading, and it reads like a spy novel, to be honest. The PCB dumping Shaheen Shah Afridi, that is, after one series as skipper, then making up statements for him, supporting Babar Azam, then Shaheen being angry about it, and all the sides coming together in a military training camp and coming to a truce. It really is it's something out of a novel. And that coupled with they almost missed the deadline for naming their team. They didn't name a shadow team earlier or a couple of months ago, 6 weeks ago. They just got it in there in time. Some selectors saying they hadn't actually been consulted by the team that was selected, had to go back to the drawing board. It just seems like a bit of a mess. And the one thing that we do know, as I mentioned, is it's very hard for teams to win on the field when they're losing so badly off the field. With all that disharmony, which now leads me to Ireland, right? So interestingly, the last match of pool play in Group A is Pakistan versus Ireland. And it's very possible that that game could decide who makes it through to this group stage, to the Super 8 stage. If Ireland versus Pakistan for a match in the Super 8s has to happen, Ireland could easily get up and win a one-off match to get through.
Haven't Ireland beaten Pakistan
in a World Cup
World Cup in the West Indies before? Spooky.
Yeah.
You talk about your spy novels, right?
That was the day before Bob Walton.
Yeah, I was about to say
that
gets a bit darker after that. But look, it's very possible. So I'm not I've picked that I think that India and Pakistan are going to get through, but I'm definitely not nailing Pakistan to the mast there, saying that they're going to get through over Ireland. Anything could happen.
What do you reckon is more likely? Pakistan going into that last game, Pakistan are already through, or Pakistan have to win that game to get through, or are already eliminated?
So I mean, if it plays out, it will be Ireland and Pakistan have beaten everyone except India, and they have to beat each other to get through.
Yeah.
It won't come down to run rate unless there's weather around, which hopefully there won't be. It'll be whoever wins that match, sudden death, gets through.
Are we writing off USA then? We're completely writing them off?
Look, they've had a great run into the tournament. They had a 4-0 victory over Canada. And then they had a 2-1 victory over Bangladesh. And the one that they lost, they got smashed, but it was the last game of the series, and they put in some substitutes. So, look, anything can happen. There's interesting narratives coming out of the camp. Stuart Law, who's the coach there, has said, it's not an upset to beat India or Pakistan in this format of cricket. So, look, anything can happen, but I'm going to say India and probably Pakistan are the ones that are going to get through, but Ireland definitely an outside chance.
Let's talk a little bit about the players you're most looking forward to watching in the pool.
Yeah, I guess for me, pretty selfish. I do want to see Corey Anderson. Very exciting to see him back in international cricket.
Cool, isn't it?
His I think he had a lot more to offer New Zealand cricket prior to his departure, and it's good to see him still in the international game. So Corey Anderson.
And what's his story? Is he fly in, fly out to play cricket, or is he settled there?
He's married. Yeah. He married an American. So he's been there for a long time. I mean, obviously he had injuries, and then I think coming back from injuries, had some struggles, and then kind of lost form a little bit, and again, kind of I think ended up deciding to put his life before sport, and then obviously it's played out really nicely that he's moved to a country that's ascending in their cricket. So, yeah, I think it's very cool. It's a very cool story.
And then from a Pakistani Pakistani perspective, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how a player like Shaheen Shah Afridi, only 24 years of age, I believe, how he bounces back from the dropping of the captaincy, playing in a environment which is probably not conducive to winning. It's going to be quite exciting to see him play. And then, we've got India, right? All the superstars, it's going to be great to see them play. I'm very excited to see what someone like Virat Kohli can do on what will be a big stage in the US against Pakistan when that match happens. It's very interesting. We talk about when it gets to those sort of, the showcases of our game, that will be a showcase of our game, and it'll be interesting to see who responds well to that pressure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I hope it'll be a drop-in pitch, I believe, that's been curated overseas and will be, barged into New York where that game is. So, look, I hope it does the game justice. And I think what we've seen is drop-in pitches have been pretty consistent over the course of the last 10 years, haven't they? They've got the sort of technology nailed now. They tend to be pretty decent, easy-paced batting wickets. And to be honest, that's probably what you want to see for a game between Pakistan and India in New York.
What do you think? What do you think the US want out of this tournament? I mean, obviously, other than performing well on the field, what do you think is that they're going to look at as a success and actually something that can grow their cricket and grow cricket in America? Because that's the key, right? Growing this team is great, but you want to grow people to love the game of cricket in America. How are they going to go about doing that?
Yeah, look, I might be stretching my prep a little bit, but this leads into the Olympics as well, where cricket is going to be part of that Olympic game. So I think there's a period of time that as an emerging, and let's be honest, it's an emerging global sport outside of probably the 18 of these 20 nations. And, you look at Zimbabwe, who aren't here, as an example. We're going to have some of these countries, whether it's the USA, Nepal, name any European nation that's on the up and up as well. We're going to have an emerging group of countries where we're trying to grow the game, and this is an opportunity for the United States to have a really red hot crack at it with Major League Cricket, this tournament, and then the Olympics. So that I think they're going to want to convert some people from local markets, a little bit like they did with soccer. If you go back to, what would it have been, the World Cup in 96, I think, or something like that?
USA 94.
94, sorry. Euro was 96. I'm thinking of Gaza and his goal against Scotland. But yeah, 94, that World Cup. And then you look at what's happened to soccer in America after that. It's now one of the most participation-heavy sports, particularly in schools, and actually particularly for girls as well. So they're going to probably want to see some traction there from being able to get that game to wider audiences than just the traditional expat communities, where there is a lot of participation in the US. I think over a couple of 100,000 people play cricket every week, but across a relatively small proportion of their population of 300 mil or whatever.
If we're talking about sort of KPIs, what does success look like for the US? I think if we look back to the start of the NRL season when they kicked it off in Las Vegas there, they had metrics around how many eyeballs were on the games. And I think that's very similar here. And it's the games that the US are playing, not necessarily, that India-Pakistan game. We know that that's going to have a lot of eyeballs no matter what. But games where the United States are playing Canada, opening game, if the US can win that game, they will automatically have some momentum going into the next games. And they might not win another game, but they want to see a team that goes out there and is very competitive, and getting those eyeballs on the game is what's going to determine whether it's a success, I think.
Anything else on Group A? Or are we on to Binksy?
On to Binksy. I just, it's going to be very interesting. I think that Ireland have a real opportunity here to make it through to the Super 8, because all going to plan, that last group match is going to be an absolute cracker.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Over to you, Binksy. Group B.
Group B.
That's the second one, I think.
Second one, yeah. So they've gone sequential here in the numbering format. So Group B is Australia, England, Scotland, Namibia, and Oman. Teams, I think, will make it through. I think it's going to be Australia and England. And look, I think that the surprise package look, I think I've got question marks here. I've got probably two, and that's Scotland and Namibia. Namibia, I think, I think have obviously come through and qualified ahead of Zimbabwe. One of the test playing nations of recent times. They've got a couple of pretty decent guys that have played a little bit of franchise cricket in Gerhard Erasmus and David Visa, who keeps going through the franchise, the franchise tournaments. And then I think talked earlier on about whether spin's going to play a part in this tournament. And if we go back to the last edition of the World Cup, Mark Watt and Hamza Tahir for
I love Mike Watt.
The left arm orthodox spin twins. Really good records in that World Cup. So I think if we do see spin play a part, they've got an opportunity. And I think when we've seen good spin bowling, we've seen particularly left arm spin has been something that some big name players have struggled against. So you might see a little bit of I think it was Kevin Peterson, famously from an England perspective, kept getting out to every single left arm spinner he played against. So that's where I think Scotland have probably got a chance as the upset team in that group. But realistically, I think if I look down these groups, that is the group with the least chance of a significant upset in my view. I think England and Australia should get through.
Should we test something? What number who do you think is going to top Pool B, Baldy?
England.
And Binksy, who do you think is going to top Pool B?
So I can actually prove that I've got this. I've got Australia at the top. Yeah.
We knew that. That was the most obvious answers of the show. I am interested to grill both of you.
Twice. Look, it's the same. Yeah.
I want to grill both of you just for a second.
Yep.
Particularly, let's go to Baldy first. Yeah. I'm intrigued to see. I guess for both of you, if you've thought about starting 11s, or best 11s out of the squad, and for Australia, the question mark for me is mainly around what do they do in that middle order. And I think if I was picking that side, I'd be like, damn, we have to pick one of those keepers, because I'd much rather, from a lineup point of view, have all of the options that we have in the Stoinis, Maxwell, Tim David, Cameron Green kind of mould.
You have to have a keeper.
But yes, you have to have a keeper. And I think because you're going to pick Inglis or Wade in there, it's going to be very hard to pick all of those guys. And so I'm fascinated to see.
Don't have to wear gloves, though, interestingly. We found out this year.
Do you not? Okay. Well, maybe they won't go with a keeper. But you tell me, who do you think is actually under the most pressure from those players? Because if you looked at the IPL, Maxwell's had an absolute shocker and appears to have not had a very good time at the IPL as well. But it seems very hard for me to think that they would leave him out, particularly when he has a role to play with the ball, I think, as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Cameron Green's going to be the odd one out. I think, for me, the interesting one is Tim David, for me, is an absolute lock at number 6, and it's a strike rate thing. He had a terrific strike rate in the IPL. His strike rate has been fantastic in international cricket over several years. He is a lock at number 6. You can have your pick of Inglis or Wade, as is your preference, to be the closer at number 7. I don't mind that Wade is a left-hander. That adds a little bit more dynamism to the middle order for Australia, because most of the other guys are right-handed, other than Head and Warner at the top. Marsh is the captain, so he's going to bat at 3. I don't think Australia are going to drop Maxwell from the number 4/number 5 position. I like the fact that he gives them more spin options, because I think he's probably an all-round better cricketer at number 4/5 than Ashton Agar is at 7 as the other bowler. So I like Maxwell at 5. And then for me, it's the question of whether you have Stoinis at 4 and can bowl swing, or you have Cameron Green at 4 and can bowl a bit of seam. In the West Indies, I like Marcus Stoinis in that position. Yes, he's been inconsistent internationally over the last several years. He had a very inconsistent IPL with some couple of standout performances. But the way Australia have used him in the past is as a bowler that can bowl the first or second over of the bowling spell and bowl a little bit of swing. So we get an over or two out of him and we can get some batting. So I like that's the role that Marcus Stoinis can play. I think Cameron Green is by far the better cricketer, but I think in the balance of that Australian team, Marcus Stoinis works a little bit better.
Matthew Wade batting at 5, ? Could you see it happening?
I can't, because I think that I think that's where Stoinis and Maxwell will probably bat, and I think that Matthew Wade would probably end up batting at 7 for Australia and closing the innings as opposed to batting at the top of the order. The challenge that you've got, though, is that Greg Inglis, I keep calling him that, Josh Inglis, not as good a cricketer as Greg, but a better footballer, is probably best suited to opening the innings, but he's never going to bat there. So I think Australia, in terms of balance of the closer, will have David and Wade. But, if they pick Josh Inglis, they're probably not going to miss out on too much there.
Do you think there's any scenario, I think no, but where they went really batter heavy? Because all the guys that you've named can bowl. Like, Stoinis, Green, Head can bowl a few overs. But Maxwell, particularly if we think it's going to spin in the West Indies, I think any other international side would do that. But because this Australian bowling lineup, Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood and Zampa, is so phenomenal, I just can't see how they would ever do that.
I can't see them doing it. The only thing I can see Australia doing is dropping Hazelwood and playing an extra all-rounder in Green and then Stoinis, whoever batting at 8. The other thing I can see Australia doing is batting Ashton Agar at 8 and then dropping Hazelwood and playing 3 spinners effectively with Maxwell, Agar and Adam Zampa in that scenario. So I think Hazelwood will be the first to miss out. But he has been such a good white ball bowler for Australia over the last 3 years. I think it would be a big disservice to him to miss out on the side. And then you've got Nathan Ellis waiting in the wings, who's been really good when he's played for Australia. And Nathan Ellis can bowl at the death, which traditionally we've struggled to do, even with those big names. So there's lots of different permutations that Australia can throw at teams. I think we'll start slow in the tournament. That's why I think England will win the group. But I can see Australia being in the semi-finals and or the final of this tournament.
Do you think Hazelwood regrets not playing the IPL now?
I don't think so. I think he'll be fresh. I just don't know that he'll have all of the miles in his legs. But he's such an experienced campaigner now that he's going to know going into the tournament, even with relatively little warm-up, fitness, match practice, whatever, the lengths and the lines that and the paces that he needs to bowl in those conditions because he's been there, done that.
With that 4-pronged attack that's really sort of world-class, that leaves Stoinis, Maxwell, Marsh and Head possibly as a 5th option. Who do you have the most confidence in this area of the world?
I like Stoinis to bowl 1 over in the power play and to bowl with a bit of swing to see what happens. And then I think it's a case of Maxwell's got to come to the party in this tournament where he didn't in the IPL. He's not the guy I have the most faith in, but I think he's the guy who's got to come to the party and perform.
Where'd this fly come from?
I don't know.
It hasn't been in the room for the last hour.
Binksy, before you mentioned a few players that you're keen to see, my question for England really is, how much pressure do you think Matthew Mott is under? Because there was a lot of criticism, obviously, of the World Cup.
Yeah,
the ODI World Cup. Is he if they don't perform well in this tournament? Is he under pressure?
Yeah.
How much though? Is he?
Oh, he's gone.
Gone? Really?
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at it, he's been in for the best part of 2/3 of a cycle at the end of this World Cup. So I think that would be the natural time potentially for him to go. We obviously didn't have a great showing in the 50 over World Cup. Obviously, we still hold this trophy at the moment.
Yeah.
So you'd think if he wins it, it's whether or not he wants to go round again and build for the next 50 over edition or not. And you would suggest probably not. So I think one way or another, it probably is either well done, you've won the World T20 twice, or thanks very much, you're on your bike anyway.
Interesting.
So that'd be my view.
So it's win or sacked for Matthew Mott in your view.
Well, I think it's win or sacked, and I think even if he wins, I think he then says, "Well, thanks, I've had enough of this," and particularly because you're under a lot of pressure with the English media, and whether he says he reads it or not, it's gonna affect him. I think there's probably is the last we'll see him as an England white ball coach.
Interesting. I did not expect that.
And we'll see Owen Morgan come in.
Wow.
There you go. Out of here first.
Before we move on to the next group, players that you're keen to see.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the Scottish Scottish spinners and a couple of guys from Namibia. From an England perspective, I think it's nailed on. I'm really looking forward to seeing Phil Salt and Will Jacks at the top of the order. When I say the top of the order, I think Jacks will bat 3. Not open. We'll see Josh Butler, I think, open with Phil Salt. And then I think that I think it's pretty much locked on that it'll be Bairstow at 4, Brook at 5. They seem to want to play Livingston, so I think it's a choice of whether they go with Livingston or Ali at 6. And then it's difficult, I think, to predict the way they'll go with the bowling, but they've got every single option covered. They've got a left armour, they've got 2 quicks, they've got a leg spinner, they've got a left arm spinner, and then they've got the death bowling of Chris Jordan that they really like. So I think that they're really, really going to be clear with what their plans are, depending on what kind of pitches they see. The one thing I don't think we'll see is we're not going to see anything with heaps and heaps of pace. So I wonder. I don't think we'll see Archer and Wood play together because I think one guy who can do you through the air is enough. If we were playing on really, really fast wickets, it might be another story.
Do you think we'll see much of Jofra? It's cool to see. I'm from a neutral point of view. Great to see him back.
Yeah, look, I guess, he's had sort of this stop-start, hasn't he? Who knows? They've taken their time getting him back to fitness. He bowled rapid in that first game against Pakistan. I think he was clocked up at, 92, 93 miles an hour. Even with the home speed guns turned up a little bit, that's still pretty quick. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, interesting to see what they do. Whether they do rotate him and Mark Wood to give them both a chance, because both of them aren't great at backing up at the moment. You would have to say. Group C, the third group in this preview, and this is over to you, Stu.
Yes, so Group C is the West Indies, New Zealand, Afghanistan, Papua New Guinea, and Uganda. And you kind of talked about off air about the toughest group and being Group D and lots of different options. I'm actually terrified of this group from a New Zealand point of view. Not
why?
What are you not afraid of Afghanistan?
I'm not afraid of Afghanistan.
Really? Why not?
Because I just think that we've got a better team.
Okay. I think we'll make it through.
Okay. From now on, whenever I downplay the fortunes of my team, I'm going to replay this conversation.
No, honestly, how many? You look at that Afghanistan side. How many? That there are. If you think about T20 players, we've got Rashid Khan, Gurbaz, Ahmadsai, Nabi, Mujib, Nur Ahmad, Naveen, Faruqi. These are all players that playing significant T20 franchise cricket at the moment. They look. Maybe I'll be wrong. I hope I'm wrong that New Zealand goes out there and deals to them. But, if we're talking about this being a spin-heavy World Cup potentially as well, they've got Mujib, Nur Ahmad, Rashid Khan and Nabi in their bowling attack. That's going to be pretty difficult for New Zealand, for West Indies, for anyone to kind of face. I think if you guys are all grinning and that they are no chance.
This is what I sound like. This is what I sound like whenever I talk about Australia.
We've got Glenn Phillips, you forget.
Do you guys genuinely think that Afghanistan are no shot in this tournament?
No, I think they're dangerous. I think they're super dangerous, and I think you should be wary of them. But I think if New Zealand are going to continue their run of knockout play in world tournaments, you have to take care of business against Afghanistan, against a team like Afghanistan, as dangerous as they are.
That's a really good way to put it. I don't see us. That could be proved completely wrong, but I just don't see us losing to both Afghanistan or West Indies. If we drop one, that's fine. I still think we make it through on run rate or whatever happens. But no, I'm not worried of playing both of them.
I guess that's where I feel like there's some jeopardy in here, because I do think there's a chance that maybe all of those teams beat each other.
Yes.
And the three of them are suddenly having to play for run rate or something. Because I think, we've seen the devastating power of so many of the, we talked about the West Indian players, I'm sure, sounds like every single one of them's been on the phone to Sunil Narine saying, please come out of retirement. And he wouldn't, hasn't done it. So, but you still look through their side and, there's so much power, particularly in their batting lineup. When you think of guys like Puran and Russell and Hetmeyer, there's Rovman Powell, their top order as well with King and stuff. There's so many, concerning players that can just win you a game. So look, as much as I do think New Zealand ultimately, I think we will find a way. Like you said, I think we will find a way to make it through this pool. I don't think it's we can write them down in the same way that we have potentially for some of these other sides.
I think I just probably look at the West Indies, and you've named a lot of firepower there that bats in the middle order for them. I don't think they've got that top of the order firepower to the same extent. I think they've got Johnson, Charles, and Brandon King.
Shea Hope, probably three.
Shea Hope, but I mean, he was really, probably because of his 50 over form, has forced his way into that conversation. I think he's a really good player. But I wonder whether they've got that firepower there. When you reel through those names, though, you should be worried that there's a potential banana skin there. But I think I've got to agree with Raj. If you go into a world tournament and you're worried about getting out of your pool with Afghanistan in, then you probably should go home and not bother with the Super 8s.
Well, okay, maybe interesting. I guess from a New Zealand point of view, I do find it hard. I think we're a side that maybe the IPL has not been helpful for us because of the build-up stuff. I mean, obviously we've had some players go to Pakistan during that time, but a lot of the New Zealand players and key players have just sat on the sideline for a long time. I know Rutchin's played a lot. Daryl Mitchell's played a lot. But yes, so Finn Allen hasn't played. He was injured leading up, so didn't get to go to Pakistan.
Kane didn't play heaps, did he? Yeah.
Kane barely played in the IPL. Phillips didn't play at all. So, obviously, so we've had Bolt play, and Ferguson and Henry, a little bits and pieces. Santner played a couple of games.
Mitchell.
There's a lot of guys who've just been sitting there for 2 months. And also, I know we've talked about how the professional cricketers, they go on, and I'm sure the IPL, they've had families with them for various times. You said, the Aussie players went home for a couple of days. These guys have sat there for 2 months, and now they've got the prospect of another month away from home. And it's a lot, like 3 months is a long time away from your family or from real life, I guess.
Johnny Bairstow's been in India. He's got citizenship now. He's been there that long this year.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm finding it probably, maybe it's the worry is more around, I don't know what to expect from this New Zealand side because so many players, we just haven't seen them play in a New Zealand shirt for quite a while. And I think there's question marks around, more around our bowling. I think our batting lineup, in my head at least, is quite secure, but I don't quite know who our best bowlers are.
Have you got an 11?
Yes, I do. So, I mean, look, I think Allen and Conway, if they're both fit, which, sounds like from all reports that they are, they will be the openers. We're looking at Williamson at 3, Ravindra, Mitchell, Phillips as your top 6. And that's a lineup that I'm very, very happy with. I do think that, all the stuff we talked about before about maybe the 160, 170 kind of scores actually helps us a lot. Like I think when I look through that lineup, and particularly the Williamson role, as much as I still think he is a player that can get you to the score you need. That's sort of always how I feel about Williamson. I think he's much better getting you to 170 than getting you to 220, for example, because that's just not the way he necessarily plays. So, I think that's your top 6. And then your question mark is more around who's at 7, probably based on the conditions. So that's whether you want Chapman, Nish, and Bracewell. And that Chapman probably only comes into play if you're thinking Ravindra and Phillips are giving you 4 overs, which maybe 6 months ago was probably a risk. Maybe less so now if you genuinely think Phillips can stand up to that. And then, bowlers, I think they'll go, well, I would go with Santner, Henry, Ferguson, and Bolt as your 4 bowlers. I don't know what they're going to do because they've shown a lot of faith in Sodhi. They've shown a lot of faith in Sodhi. To me, they would be the last 2 names on my team sheet. I wouldn't necessarily play them in any games in this tournament because I think that they don't give me the confidence that I think they're much more hittable than any of the other bowlers. And I think if we're talking about we need another spin option, then you've got Phillips, you've got Ravindra, but also you can bring Bracewell in to bat 7, and he gives you that power, and he can bowl decent off spin as well. So yeah, that'd be how I see it.
It's very similar to what I've got down here, but I've got probably a pretty major difference is I'm actually picking one of Ravindra and Allen to open, and that person opens the batting, and I've got Jimmy Neesham at 6. And the reason I have him at 6 is we know what his closing capability is, and also historically, definitely under this coaching regime, we have used Jimmy Neesham to bowl a special over.
Yeah.
Bowler over where we get a wicket or where we trying to close out an innings. I think that he plays in our first 11, and they pick one of Ravindra and Allen, remembering that Allen actually, he was dropped not long ago. So this is his first sort of foray back into the New Zealand side in a while.
I think they've always wanted him in the T20 format. Obviously left out of the 50 over World Cup, but I would say that the T20 opening spot has been earmarked for Fennell for a long time, and they're hoping he delivers in the way that he kind of delivered last T20 World Cup, where he scored that great score against Australia, and his innings probably won us. With his innings, I know that Conway then went on and got the 100, but the way he has the potential more than anyone in our lineup to do what Abhishek Sharma's been doing in the IPL, to actually win you a game in that first 6 overs.
If he comes off, we win. That's what it sort of comes down to. If he can score 100 off 8 overs or whatever, crazy stuff like that. The other thing is, for me, Glenn Phillips, and I've been sort of banging on about this for 2 years now, 5 or even 6, as you mentioned there, I just think that's criminal, batting him that low down. I think that he needs to be in our top 4. He scored 100 in the last... If I'm remembering right, in the last
T20 World Cup.
T20 World Cup, against Sri Lanka. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that he batting so low in the order is.
Who does he bat up the order in place of that?
I've got Mitchell at 4 here. I would bet Phillips at 4 ahead of him.
And I guess if you're leaving out one of Allen or Ravindra, then I guess he can go into that 4 spot or whatever. And I mean, look, this coaching staff has really given Chapman a lot of opportunities as well. And look, he was one of the T20 players. I think, did he win T20 International Player of the Year last year? So, he's contributed.
But the great thing I like about the lineup that we've talked about in general is no one out of any of the bowlers that we have mentioned has to bowl 4 overs. We can go in with these 7 or 8 options, and whatever sort of works well on the day, they can bowl through. You don't have to bolt 4 overs if it's not working for him. He might bowl his first 2 up front. You bring him through for 1 in the 12th over, and that's it. He doesn't come back at the end because it just wasn't working for him. We've just got so many more options. And when you look at teams like, we didn't really go into India's lineup, they've got a very rigid 5 or 6 bowlers in their team that have to come off. So that's why I think we've got a little bit of an advantage here with that lineup anyway.
We talked a lot about Afghanistan, and probably we can't therefore say they're going to be a potential surprise package. Is there anyone else that you think can,
I mean, honestly, if PNG or Uganda pull off an upset, that it would be incredible. I think that those 2 sides especially are probably the epitome of what we were talking about before. What a cool opportunity for both of those 2 nations to go in and play. And, I don't know, but I imagine even raising the funds for going to this tournament, they must get some ICC support for this, but even the funds to play cricket in those countries, it must be a challenge on a daily basis for those boards. So how cool. I remember the celebrations from both of those 2 teams when they qualified in those qualifiers. Very, very cool scenes. So look, I hope they go and get everything out of this tournament, because it's going to be a really fun occasion.
Awesome. Let's move on to Group D, which was the group of death. But now that we think that Afghanistan and West Indies go through, it's in Group C. It can no longer be that much turmoil in this group. It's straightforward.
Okay.
Tell us who's going through.
Look, the only way that this group could be any more inconsistent in terms of the way that these teams all play their cricket is if we added Pakistan to this group as well, because it is just it's a who's who of inconsistent cricket teams in this group. We've got South Africa, inconsistent as flip when it comes to semi-finals and finals of big tournaments. We've got Sri Lanka. Who knows what's going to happen there? Bangladesh, ditto. We've got the Netherlands, who are inconsistent but not deliberately so. And we've got Nepal, who are, I think, probably the also-rans in this group, particularly with a couple of big names unavailable for them for different reasons. But if we have a look at South Africa, Sri Lanka, and the Netherlands Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and South Africa in particular, 3 highly variable cricket teams. I mean, we've just seen South Africa pull off a couple of years of looking like they're a really, really good cricket side, and now they've just gone 0-3, whatever it was, against I think it was the West Indies in their warm-up game.
They're playing a B side.
Yeah. So, and we don't know what we're going to get because we didn't see the middle order that we expect to see in this World Cup squad. So we got no Markram, we got no Heinrich Klaassen, we got no David Miller, we got no Tristan Stubbs in that series against the West Indies. So who knows what we're going to get from South Africa, either in pool play or in the big tournament. The interesting thing in this group is that Sri Lanka and Bangladesh both play each other and South Africa in their first two games. So we're going to know a lot about the makeup of this group very, very early on in group play. And then Sri Lanka and Bangladesh both play the other two nations. It's sort of in the back half of their pool play. So it is really on for young and old at the very, very beginning of this group stage. And it could be anything in this tournament.
That's the most exciting thing for me, is that a team like Netherlands, they could have their own destiny in their own hands really late in pool play here. They're playing Nepal first. If they win that, they've got a little bit of momentum going into the tournament. The next game against South Africa becomes a free game. Go out there, do what you have to. Who knows what happens? And then they play the other two teams that we talked about. But my point is they could have their destiny in their hands. They just have to win games going into those last two games of their pool play.
And for the Netherlands, they will have no fear for these other sides. They have
just beaten South Africa.
They've beaten South Africa. Exactly. They have beaten South Africa. On current form, Bangladesh are a shambles. They've just lost to the USA.
That's kind of why I don't think that this is actually that hard, because Bangladesh are a shambles, aren't they? Like, I mean, look, let's see them come out and now perform.
Look,
but they were a shambles at that 50 over World Cup. They've just lost to the USA. Like, I don't think they're a good side at the moment.
They are, as Raj said, they are going through so much off-field stuff at the moment, and Sri Lanka is the same, both in their cricket and in their sports administration and as a nation. It is hard to know what these guys are going to be able to put on the field, because they are going to have to almost have a siege mentality. It is us against everybody. It's just these 15 guys and the 48 support staff in the back room against the rest of the world. And if they can put that kind of siege mentality, I've got some numerology for the South African cricket fans that bodes well for their progress in this tournament. So stay tuned.
With your crystals.
That's the attitude that they're going to have to adopt. They're going to have to put all the external noise away and just focus on the cricket. If they can do that, we've seen Sri Lanka do wonderful things in World Cup tournaments. We've seen them go through big runs in tournaments like this, where they've got to go through multiple stages and make noise. They've got the talent to do it. Bangladesh have the talent to do it, but are they going to be able to pull it off? I'm not really sure.
I love that Sri Lankan bowling attack. Raj and I were talking about it at the weekend. They've got Patirana. Well, I mean, assuming they're all fit. I think
this is the big question
about their bowling attack.
Who is going to be fit for Sri Lanka?
But Patirana, Tushara, Madhushankar, then they've got Hasaranga, Theekshana. Like, if that's your five bowlers that you can put out every single game, that's a concerning lineup, because those guys bowl up front. They've got Patirana to bowl at the death, and those spinners through the middle.
Great bowling lineup. It's still hard to defend 50 runs.
That's my question mark for Sri Lanka, is not how they're going to take wickets and restrict sides, but how they're going to get runs. Sri Lanka is going to need to have a big tournament. Kusal's going to need to step up. They're going to need to have other guys step up around them. You know, who knows if Angelo Matthews is going to even play, but is he going to have a big tournament? There are just so many question marks around Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, around how they're going to perform. We know that the Netherlands are going to go and punch above their weight, as they always do. It's just a question mark of whether or not they've got enough
to win 2 games.
To win, to beat Bangladesh and or Sri Lanka to get themselves into the big mix.
But that bowling lineup is world class. You know, you add in Hasaranga, who we didn't see enough of probably during the IPL, but Patirana, Theekshana, Madhushankar, these guys were almost unplayable when we've sort of seen them last, even all the way back to the last one-day World Cup. Batting's just going to be their issue, but great bowling lineup.
The thing that I think works in Sri Lanka's favour a little bit, and I think it's the same story with New Zealand, is that any variability in pitches, like you get a pitch that's not perfect conditions for batting, it actually plays into that Sri Lankan bowling attack's hand, because they do a little bit with the ball. And I think if it's a little bit tacky or a little bit too paced, uneven bounce, those guys are the guys who can exploit those conditions and make it really hard.
A couple of different actions in there,
for a team like South Africa, whose middle order is just like packed full of guys who see ball, hit through the line of the ball. If there's variability, those guys could get found out in a game like that. And that's the danger for that South African side, is what are we going to get from Markram, from Klaassen, from David Miller, and from Tristan Stubbs in that middle order. They are going to have to make a lot
Are you
of runs.
concerned about that?
I am.
I look at that and go, wow.
Well, okay. You have a look at their form in the IPL. Markram and Klaassen, I think, only made 150-plus score. Klaassen made
had a
3.
reasonable tournament.
David Miller only made 150-plus score in that IPL.
He was injured for a decent chunk of it.
He did, but there's some concerns about that middle order and that engine room for South Africa. Yes, they are terrific names on paper, and 2 years ago, even 18 months ago, were in tremendous form, but how is it all going to come together in this big tournament? Look, they've added a 16th person to their squad as a travelling reserve, so they've got 16 players plus 48 support staff. That makes 64 total players. I've consulted the Chinese numerology. 64 is 8 squared. 8 is a very lucky number in Chinese numerology. All of these factors are playing into a good tournament for South Africa. All of the players have been issued with a physical dossier and a calendar and a calculator, all of which have all of the DLS tables pre-programmed into them. The number 213 is pre-programmed into every phone, so they know how many they need to get in the semi-final when they concede 212 and need 213 to win.
Wow.
All of this is coming together for South Africa, I'm telling you.
It's funny you mentioned that. There's no rain day for that second semi-final. There is for the first one. So there's conspiracy theories already. Baldy, you've done what you normally do. We asked a question at the start, which is which 2 groups are going to make it out.
South Africa?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Netherlands.
Oh, I love it.
I actually love that. That's good.
Yep.
I don't agree, but I love it.
Awesome.
The other sides are going to fall over.
That would be great. Great to see. I just wonder whether the Netherlands will, especially if we do think it spins, whether Roland van der Merwe could have gone round just one more time. I know he's got a county contract, I think.
Don't discount Tim Pringle.
I won't. Yeah. There is a lot of New Zealand connections actually.
A lot of New Zealand connections. It's really fun for us to watch. Actually, on that, it'll be interesting to see if Logan van Beek, he's the one probably that I'm looking for, whether he can again put up a good performance at a ICC event and sort of push for New Zealand selection, because I know that's something he wants to do. So yeah.
How long would he have to wait? Could he play straight away?
I think they can go if it's not maybe I'm wrong, but I think from a test playing nation, when we saw it with Ripon recently, who was playing for the Netherlands and then representing New Zealand, didn't have to have a stand down period. So I think that's still the case.
Yeah. Okay.
Prediction time's it.
It is prediction times. So clearly Australia will win the group. England will come second. But no, should we go left to right? Predictions?
Sure.
So we're going to name 4 semi-finalists and a winner. Is that right?
We can do. I've just got my finalists and winners actually. But
have you done the numbers around which people fall into which group?
That's why I just thought there's so many variations for how many can get into different things. I just thought I'm going to name my top 2 teams and my winner.
I tried to do that and couldn't. So I just thought, I'm just going to...
Spirals all out of control.
Well, I cared enough about our listeners and viewers that I did. So.
Okay. Well,
let's start with you then.
So will you be able to tell us if our things are actually physically impossible?
Well, it depends where they finish in the group, right?
Yeah.
So, but
nothing is impossible, Mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go...
it's impossible. Zimbabwe will not win this World Cup.
That's true. I do think you're right with that. I have a South Africa-Australia final. I think South Africa is a much better side than maybe you gave them credit for then, that middle order.
Just told you all the reasons why the numerology port's in their favour.
I love that middle order. I love that middle order. I think they've got bowling options as well. I think they've got enough bowling options now that they might not even have to pick Unrik Nortje, who's having a shocker every time he runs into bowl at the moment. So, I think that they are a quality outfit. And in Shamsi and Maharaj, the spin, they now have a well-rounded bowling attack. I think that can, that they can be, if they play well, they can be a total package sort of side that can win in any conditions. As much as I've just talked them up, I do think Australia wins this tournament.
So for my four semi-finalists, I've gone that way. I've got New Zealand and South Africa making it out of the Super 8 into one semi-final, and India and Australia making it out of the Super 8s into the other semi-final. And India versus New Zealand final, and New Zealand to win.
Oh, I love this.
New Zealand
How good.
That is fantastic.
To be honest, I actually did feel very strongly about South Africa, but until they proved to me that they can stand up at these sort of tournaments.
So they didn't last time? It took you till about match 40 or whatever of the 50 over World Cup?
They didn't get there, did they?
That's true, I guess.
Yeah, that's my only thing. But I think
New Zealand?
I'm going to go New Zealand.
Cool.
Um,
I'm just going to go. Look, I've been pretty consistent the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks, so I'm just going to go with KKR. No, so I'm going to go West Indies, Australia, India, South Africa as my 4 semi-final teams. Not necessarily in that order. I'm going to go for an Australia versus West Indies final, and I'm going with West Indies to win the World Cup.
Wow, on home soil, that is a tremendous prediction.
And you ridiculed me for saying the West Indies and Afghanistan were tough teams to beat. I like it. Over to you, Baldy.
Right, who's going to make the semi-finals? India will lose a semi-final. South Africa will also lose a semi-final. So I have Australia playing New Zealand in the final. I think we're going to win it. I think we'll beat New Zealand in the final.
You didn't think they'd make it out of the pool at the top?
No, I did say that New Zealand will make it out of the pool.
No,
Australia.
No, I said they'd make it out of the pool. I said they'd finish second to England in the pool. And then they'd storm home, as they always do in tournament play. Strong finishes, Australia.
So just to recap, you've got South Africa.
I think so. No, I think Australia will win the tournament.
Okay,
I think South Africa makes it to the final.
So Australia,
New Zealand,
Australia, West Indies.
Going around the table, I think the interesting things for me, one, none of us, well, I didn't pick a semi-finalists, but none of us have picked England, which I do think is maybe underrating them. And none of us actually picked India to make the final. Is the India thing, is that sort of the history of... Yeah. Is that the history of tournaments in the way that they've not been able to get over the final hurdle that's making us say that?
It is for me, and I think it's the easy thing to say that India will win this tournament because they've got the most talent, they've got the biggest names, they've got just as many match winners as anyone else. They've got Jasprit Bumrah, who has been a cheat code for the last 12 months in T20 cricket, and we haven't really talked about any of this in the group play.
We haven't really thought about how many people are going to switch the podcast off and never listen to it again.
With India, I think that the squad that they have has a flaw in it, in that everything has to go well for them to plan. They can't deviate from their plan much. Like if they lose 4 wickets...
This is the Mumbai Indians problem, right?
Yeah, if they lose 4 wickets in the first 6 overs, normally that's a problem for everybody. But they literally have... If they lose 1 more wicket, they're into the bowlers. Like they have no depth around their bowlers start from 8.
Yep.
And they've only got 6 bowlers if they're going to include sort of the Pandya.
Jadeja and Pandya.
So I think that there is a little bit of a flaw there. That being said, they're all incredible superstars and everything could just go their way and they could win the whole thing without a...
I've got them as a semi-finalist, but I went for a little bit of romance with the West Indies getting into a home final. But all right. Well, look, just over an hour and 9 minutes for our T20 World Cup preview, just slightly less time than the whole of the IPL. We are going to be back in your feed throughout the course of the tournament to cover as much of this as we can. It's going to be exciting viewing, an unusual time of year as well for a cricket World Cup.
Yeah, and interesting times of day. I think a lot of the games are kind of for New Zealand either at around midday or at 2:00 in the morning. So there's not the kind of back-to-back nature of other tournaments have. So
awesome. Interesting. But do let us know in the comments below or via our email or website what you think about this upcoming tournament. And please also do direct others to the podcast as well, whether it's a teammate, a friend or colleague, all helps people find the Top Order podcast. But for now, it is good night and God bless from us all here in Auckland. We'll see you throughout the course of this T20 World Cup. See you later.